I'm always curious about people with the kind of profile you have in this era of social media, because it can give you tremendous power to reach all kinds of people instantly, right? Like you can put something on social media right now.
I can end my career before this interview's over.
And if you do want to do that, let's just make sure we
cool
get it
if you guys film
on the reverse shot. So just next door to us is the world headquarters for Point Grey Pictures.
Yes,
and
you make it sound like
it's huge.
Like there's other
it's
headquarters. Yeah,
and the name is from your high school, Point Grey Secondary in Vancouver, which I drive by all the time. And honest to goodness, I think of you every time because I wonder, the young Seth Rogen at Point Grey, what was he like? So let me ask you.
Oh man, I don't know. He was, he was not the coolest guy by any stretch of the imagination, but not the biggest loser either. We made a whole movie about it. I was a lot like the Jonah character in Superbad.
Look, we all know home ec is a joke, no offense. It's just like everyone takes his class to get an A. It's bullshit, and I'm sorry. And I'm not putting down your profession, but it's just the way I feel.
All right, Jules' partner isn't here today either. Pair up with her, station 4.
Jules. All right, I'll give it another shot. Give home ec another shot.
That is a good representation of what I was like in high school.
Okay, but before we get there, I just saw the footage of a 13-year-old you.
It's true, but I also did stand-up comedy.
But I mean, you didn't just do stand-up. Like before I saw the video, I thought, am I going to cringe? Like, I don't care how talented a 13-year-old is. That is a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying it because I'm sitting across from you. You were fantastic in that.
Thank you.
Now, as old women get older, hair on their head gets thinner gradually. But most women will thin discreetly, not Jewish women. They take what little hair they have left on their head and they just puff it out. So they get these gigantic old woman afros. But it's real thin, right? So when the light hits it at a certain angle, you just see right through it. And you kind of can picture what these women look like, stark bald. And it's not a pretty sight. Try to picture Gandhi in a blue floral dress.
Like you were funny, which is good. But your manner was really good. So I'm thinking to myself, how do you square that, like, coolest guy in the room with the Superbad character?
Because I was not actually like that in high school. I was not cool at high school. Again, I wasn't that bad, but I wasn't. I was really firmly in the middle. And when you tell kids in your high school you do stand-up comedy, that doesn't sound cool. That's not like traditionally cool.
But it gets better. You didn't just do stand-up comedy, you did improv.
I also did two of the coolest things.
And drama.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the only thing you were missing was band.
Exactly. We didn't have that in our high school. I probably would have done it. Yeah, so I did stand-up comedy. I think people were kind of fascinated by it, but it did not earn me like social cachet by any stretch of the imagination, no.
High school quarterback, stand-up comic.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Superbad, of course, the movie that you and your longtime friend, longtime creative collaborator, Evan Goldberg.
Yeah.
I mean, did you guys actually, were you writing notes for it while you were at Point Grey?
We were like writing the script while we were at Point Grey. Like we met in bar mitzvah class when we were 12, and then we knew we were going to go to high school together, and we knew we were going to go to Point Grey. And I was starting to do stand-up comedy around that time, and Evan wrote like comedic short stories. Oh. And when you're like a kid who's creative and into a certain thing, and you find another kid who's like the only other kid you ever met who's like into that thing, it was like really lucky. And then our high school, Point Grey, was across the street from two video stores. There was a Blockbuster and a Rogers, literally right across the street. And they had this thing where you can rent 5 movies for 5 days for $5. And so every weekend we would rent 5 movies and watch them. And the thing we would do more than anything, like we would spend more time doing this than actually watching the movies, just walking around the video store, looking at movies, talking about movies. What should we watch? Should we watch this? Reading the movies, the back of the box, all this stuff. And so then we became obsessed with movies. And then so this idea to write Superbad, like to turn our high school experiences into a movie, like developed pretty quick. We actually started like writing like a script when we were like 13 or 14 years old.
I love you.
I'm not embarrassed.
Love you.
I love you. It's like, why don't we say that every day? Why can't we say it more often?
I just love you. I just want to go to the rooftops and scream, I love my best friend Evan.
It's the most beautiful thing in the world.
Boop.
I can't take this anymore. Why are you acting like this?
Acting like what?
And then at some point as a teenager, you made the move to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
How did that come about? What made you think to do that?
I was very lucky because I moved to LA with a job. Like I was cast on Freaks and Geeks when I was out of Vancouver.
Oh, I see.
And there was like an open casting call. And
Right.
so I had an agent though. So I auditioned in Vancouver and then went to LA with a job, which actually, honestly, like is one of the most like lucky things that happened to me is that I didn't have to move to LA and then find work. I moved to LA with work. So it like instantly moved me to like the front of many lines, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's the opportunity and obviously the show loved by a lot of people. But something I only learned in doing the research for this interview is that, tell me if this is right, you were at the time the breadwinner for your family while you were doing that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's like not my parent. Yeah, like I think my money was the money being spent to do things.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it wasn't like I didn't think of it in any like stigmatized way at the time. I felt very lucky that like I had a job that paid an insane amount of money. And I remember like the first year on Freaks and Geeks, my dad was like, "You made more this year than like my whole life I've ever made put together."
Do you think that was
like,
true?
Yeah, my dad never had very good jobs.
Wow. So a fantastic opportunity as a teenager, and obviously you've been incredibly successful, but there was a bit of a dry spell soon after that, right?
Yeah.
And what was that time like?
I mean, it was a bummer, but I wrote a lot. Like that was like between 2001 and 2005, 4 or 5,
So
I
you're
guess,
like 19 to 24 or something like
yeah,
that? Yeah.
and it was several years where I essentially did nothing, which is a pretty long time, especially when you're that age,
Yeah.
And it was like the age where most people I knew were graduating college and like really starting their lives, and it seemed as though maybe my career was ending and I was going to have to move back to Vancouver and work in a video game store or something, So I think, it wasn't great. I was running out of money for sure, and opportunities did not. But it seemed like they would come for me as an actor, but as a writer, we'd written Superbad and no one wanted to make it, but it was like a very good writing sample. And we wrote Pineapple Express and no one wanted to make it, but it was another good writing sample. And so it was encouraging. Like I felt like, but at the same time, that's almost more frustrating when you're kind of being told you're doing very good work, but no one will compensate you in any way for it.
And was there ever any point where you thought, you really thought that you were pretty well done with the business?
I was never like done with the business, but I was maybe gonna have to move back to Vancouver.
Right.
Like I was just running out of money, so like I just couldn't. I was very close to hitting a point where I just couldn't afford to live in Los Angeles anymore. I was gonna have to move back into the apartment that my parents now lived in Richmond.
So everybody knows, spoiler alert,
Yeah.
it worked out.
Yes.
And just so many movies that we know so well that you were part of. Is there any one of those roles or any one of those projects where you think to yourself, that's when I knew I was making it. That's when I knew I was on the trajectory I should be on.
I mean, I was very lucky in that like it was essentially my first movies. Like, and I didn't have this perspective at the time, but like I had a very fortunate like series of events when it came to my first like 3 or 4 films coming out, in that I was like, had a smaller role in 40-Year-Old Virgin, but it was like a massively successful movie. And then I was in The Star of Knocked Up, which was a massively successful movie. And that was basically, around then is when I was like, oh, I seem like I mean, I became very famous very fast also. Like, so
Yeah.
I would just see in my own life, like, all of a sudden I got recognized everywhere I went, and the movies I was making were like received well, and people seemed to think they were good, and they were making a lot of money. So it seemed like we, at least for a while, had carved out a little space for ourselves, and the ability to continue working, which is all I ever hope to be able to do.
and that, like, as a viewer, as a consumer of movies, that's my perception too, that 40-year-old version, oh yeah, that guy, Vancouver, but then knocked up. Like, to me, it was like that. And then one of the cool things about that movie, I think, you tell me, is that besides being funny, and you did a really good job in it, is that the character you played kind of reflected your lifestyle.
I was like a Jewish Canadian guy from Vancouver,
but with a bunch of friends hanging out with them.
And those were
right?
my actual friends. It was me and Martin Starr and Jason Segel and Jay Baruchel, who's literally coming to stay with me in a week from now, and Jonah, who I'm still good friends with. Like, it was all people that I was and still am very good friends with, and people that I had like essentially lived with each of them at some point or another as like a roommate or something like that in the years leading up to the movie. So it was really funny and fun getting to work with all those guys and essentially, like really infusing our unemployed years into the lifestyle of the characters.
I think it's awesome that you're gonna have a kid, man. Think about it like this. It's just an excuse to play with all your old toys again.
You know what I think you should do?
Take care of it. Ben, you cannot let these monsters have any part of your child's life, all right? I'm gonna be there to rear your child.
You hear that, Ben? Don't let him near the kid. He wants to rear your child.
Let's talk a little bit about where we're sitting, which is the headquarters of Houseplant. And as I look around here, I see, kind of a few things that outside of your movie making are part of who you are. Right? And first of all is cannabis-related products. And a lot of people associate you with cannabis. Your kind of enthusiastic support of it, and making it a normal part of your everyday life. And so that message continues. I mean, this is an interesting time now because in Canada, it's legal.
Yeah.
People wondered if it would
Sort of.
Yeah, what do you mean sort of?
I mean, as long as it's harder to buy weed than beer, there's like massive issues and a huge deliberate choice to ignore reality and science, and that still prevails in Canada. And so it's like technically legal, but it's still very illegal in many ways.
It's funny because in Vancouver, with all the stores, it feels like it's as easy to buy as beer, but
can
maybe
you buy
not.
weed at a hockey game?
Right?
Can you
No,
buy
we
weed
cannot.
at the store? Can you buy weed at a restaurant? Can you buy weed at a bar? Like all that stuff is why it's still stigmatized and why it's like not treated as in the way it should be treated, and it is definitively harder to get than things that are much more dangerous than it.
Yeah.
And that again is like a simple like conflict of reality and effect, and the choices that the government is making are like not congruent with reality, and so as long as that happens, it's things are not as they should be. So I think Canada has done a lot of great things to legalize weed, but it's still very illegal in many ways.
Yeah.
It's still really hard to have a weed business and to sell weed and to get weed in comparison to other things that are far more dangerous than it,
Yeah, see, I hadn't thought about that. The hockey example of what you can buy and can't buy is interesting. There are a lot of stereotypes about people over the years who smoke pot, and one of them I think is people who are lazy. They're not really getting much done. You seem to be like the opposite of that.
Yeah, I have never found that stereotype to be true. I know far more lazy people who don't smoke weed in my life. So I don't think I work with a lot of people who are very lazy and never smoke weed. And so, yeah, I think, no, in general, people over the years to stigmatize weed, there's been, they like cycle through stereotypes. Like, in the 40s and 50s, it was like literally that it made you insane and you would kill people. It would make you psychotic. Like they tried to criminalize it. It would make there's psychosis. There's things like this that still keep coming back and rearing their heads. When one is proven to be untrue, they kind of move on to another one, and then that one's proven to be untrue, and then they kind of move on to another one, and that keeps happening. And laziness is one of the ones that kind of gets cycled through every now and then. But
what impact do you think it has on you?
Weed? I think for me, it is like intrinsic to my baseline functionality. Like I've compared it to like glasses. And I think to that, I think it's a lot like glasses. Like if you don't need glasses and you wear them, everything looks weird. But if you need glasses and you wear them, everything looks normal. Like for me, weed is, it brings me to a normal functional level, Yeah. And yeah, the fact that it's stigmatized and criminalized is just, it's crazy,
Second thing I notice is in that corner, the vinyl on the wall, the turntable. And let me ask you a random music question going back to Superbad. The Evan Goldberg character is forced to, under duress, sing a song.
He sings These Eyes.
Yeah, by the Guess Who.
Canadian band.
Nice little Easter egg.
Not a coincidence.
For us, yeah.
Michael Cera, a Canadian.
Yeah, but why did you choose that song?
It's a great song. We did a few songs, but Michael Cera, for sure, just sang that song the funniest.
Who's that guy?
Sing for us, sing! These eyes are crying. These eyes have seen a lot of love, but they're never gonna see another one like I have with you. These eyes are crying. These eyes have seen a lot of love, but they're never gonna see another one with you.
And then the third thing I see just over your shoulder is ceramics, which obviously are a big part of your life. I had no idea that Seth Rogen was into ceramics until the new CBC show, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But that show aside, how did ceramics become part of your life?
My wife, Lauren, she kind of implored me to try it. She had done it in high school and had taken lessons here and there over the years. And, I always was looking for creative outlets. I always had a lot of hobbies. Photography, painting, gardening, different things like that. And, but yeah, and then she was like, I think you would really like pottery. And then we took a class, and then we became members of the studio, and then we built our own studio in our garage, and we really just kept going with it. And yeah, we both have like a strong passion for it, and we do it together all the time, which is really nice. And yeah, it's become something that has been like a great creative outlet for me, and also, something I can make television shows about.
Why, hello. It's me, Seth Rogen, here at Granville Island in Vancouver, British Columbia. It's where 10 potters will be facing off in the most extraordinary ceramics competition show that this country has ever seen.
So the Great Canadian Pottery Throwdown.
Yes.
For the people who haven't seen it, what would you tell them?
I'd say it's a very warm-hearted and cozy Canadian pottery reality competition show that is in the style of, like the Great British Bake Off, these other shows where you have a number of contestants and people are very wholesomely eliminated throughout the competition, ultimately leading to a winner.
Often competition shows are contrived and cutthroat.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem to be either one of those two things.
No, there's nothing contrived. Pottery itself is temperamental and fickle and very dramatic, you never know what's going to happen. And so and it's hard, so there's no need to contrive any drama in order for it to be good television, and the pottery community is like a very welcoming and warm one. And the show definitely reflects that tone and that mentality, and that it's very supportive. All the ceramicists really got along and liked each other a lot and were very nice to each other throughout the show.
And in keeping with that, there's not a $100,000 prize at the end, winner take all.
No, there's no prize. But they still really want to win.
I'm blue, I've been deed, I've been died, I've been deed, I've been died, I've been deed, I've been died, I've been deed.
I'm always curious about people with the kind of profile you have in this era of social media, because it can give you tremendous power to reach all kinds of people instantly, right? Like you can put something on social media right now.
I can end my career before this interview's over.
And if you do want to do that, let's just make sure we
cool
get it
if you guys filmed
on the reverse shot.
That's never happened. I don't think that's happened.
So end career, but also you can, but really like funny, like you could shoot a video, a selfie video that's hilarious and just put it out, and all of a sudden you're directly reaching people. But at the same time, we all know social media is this corrosive place. There, all the things that people will say there that they'd never say to your face. And I just wonder, like, how do you manage that?
I'd say my relationship with social media has evolved greatly over the years for the healthier. I now recognize it as like a, it's not a, from my experience, it is not a place where any serious thought can be conveyed or received. Like, it is a place where people like to argue, from my experience, and where people like to speak their minds, which is lovely, but they're kind of shouting, or for me, I found myself sometimes shouting into a void, or either shouting into a void or preaching to the choir, or just creating conflict where it was not needed, And so for me, I personally have stopped attempting to convey anything of meaning through social media. My life is much better as a result of that.
You obviously, you and Evan really captured kind of adolescent life and made some great movies about that. But you're 41 now. Adolescence is way, way, way in the rearview mirror. And I just wonder, are there stories that you are writing or about to write that reflect where you are in life?
Very much so. Yeah, we're about to start shooting a TV show that we are writing and directing and producing, and I'm the star of, that is about a guy who makes movies, about a guy who works in a movie studio. And so it could not be more reflective of our lives. It's literally, it's like we are taking things that happen to us and writing them into the show.
And it's a comedy, presumably?
It is a comedy, yes.
And then also
with Canadian Catherine O'Hara.
Ah, nice. And then also in terms of the creative process, you said you kind of stepped back from trying to have any kind of meaningful conversation on social media.
Yeah.
But at this time, this like super polarized time, when
even more so.
but you have the power, even if you stay away from social media, of using scripts and the creative world to address that. Has that motivated you at all to kind of take on contemporary issues, in whether it's comedy or just some sort of movie-making way?
I mean, we really do. I produce the show The Boys, which is a very, satirical when it comes to politics and, industrial complexes and corporate intervention in our day-to-day lives, And so, we have a lot of things that I work on that maybe I'm not at the forefront of, but that I'm involved in, that are very much a part of my perspective and what I am, very a part of putting out into the world, that are very reflective of my ideals and my outlook,
It is interesting watching your movies, the characters you play, the movies you direct, to see how, first of all, it reflects where you were at your life at that point, but also how you, all of us, have changed over time. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think it's, it's something I'm always making sure is that, is this reflective truly of who we are and what we want to be communicating? And I think as I've made more and more things over the years, that's the thing I come back to the most now probably is does this reflect us and our sensibilities? Because if it does, then it can't fail that much, because it's the thing we really wanted to make. And the things that are bad are things that become something no one likes. Like, that's what I've seen the most over the years also, is like when you're making a movie and no one likes it as you're working on it, the writer doesn't like it because they've been given somebody knows the director doesn't like it because they didn't want to cast this actor that they were forced to cast. The actor doesn't like it because they know the director doesn't like them. That's when a movie sucks. But when there's like one person at least who's like, this is awesome, I love this, this is all gonna work, that's like often prevails. And so I try to at least be that person, and hopefully there's other people who also feel that way, but I know that if at least I love what we're doing and believe in it and truly thinks it speaks to who I am and what I think is great filmmaking or television or whatever, and what I would love to watch as a viewer and I would find additive and distinct and compelling and all that stuff, then it usually works, you know? And so that's something I think about a lot.